Look at this guy. What do you think he smells? Who's to say? We're in the woods with Night Danger. And I've got my Cthulhu for President shirt on. My one and only nerd shirt. Because we're talking about Lovecraft. And whether or not cosmic horror is its own genre of horror. Whether it is a meaningful departure from the gothic weird fiction that Shelley and Stoker and Dunsany and Macon were producing before Lovecraft. Is Lovecraft actually all that different from his influences? I say the answer is no. There is nothing that really makes Lovecraft's cosmic horror all that different from the guiding principles of the Romantics that came before him. And in order to articulate this, first, what do people, Redditors, generally mean when they say cosmic horror? What they mean is, one of two things. Either A, if they're literate, they mean, it's when you realize, like, the universe is so big and unfeeling and you just don't matter at all. It's an existential kind of fear. And if they're illiterate, then, it's when you go crazy, spooky tentacles, Cthulhu, whatever. We don't care about illiterate people. That's not my job. But we do care about the literate example. Because the literate example is actually not different from Frankenstein or Dracula or any of the Edgar Allan Poe stories, because it's all guided by the same principle, which is Burke's Sublime. What's Burke's Sublime, you might ask? Well, there's this wonderful little treatise that you can find. It's on Project Gutenberg. An philosophical inquiry into our conceptions of the beautiful and the sublime. I think it's a long title. It's one of those. But it's a romantic assessment of aesthetics, of what makes things enjoyable to experience artistically. Yeah. And what Burke does is he divides pleasurable aesthetic experience into two categories: the beautiful and the sublime. The beautiful is exactly what it sounds like on the tin. A flower is beautiful. A sunset is beautiful. A nice lady is beautiful. And he attributes a bunch of objective qualifiers that make things beautiful. Smoothness, symmetry, that sort of thing. Delicacy. But he does the same thing for the sublime. And what is the sublime? The sublime is when you are frightened of something, but it's good. That's an oversimplification. But the sublime is how we are able to enjoy a horror movie where a crazed man with a knife menaces and kills a bunch of people, but we would not enjoy being menaced with a knife in a supermarket. We would not enjoy the actual terror of really experiencing something horrible, but we're able to enjoy the vicarious experience of something horrible happening outside of us. And the reason this is possible is because of what Burke calls the sublime. The sublime is encountering something dangerous or frightening or terrible at a degree of removal. The example that my professor gave when I did aesthetics with him in university was, you're at a ski lodge and you look out, and on the next mountain over, on the other side of the valley, you see an avalanche and it's thundering down the mountainside. If you were on that mountain, you would be truly terrified because you're probably about to die. That avalanche is going to kill you. But when you're on the other side, when you're far away, when you have abstraction from the terror, it's wonderful. It's like a really moving aesthetic experience to see this horrible thing abstracted from you. And Burke gives a list of potential things that can add to the sublimity of a thing, that makes it a sublime thing. And he really paints in like a systematic set of categories, like largeness. When you stand at the foot of a mountain, the size of it can invoke a feeling of sublime. And to get a taste for like largeness as a sublime experience, really look up the paintings of Caspar David Friedrich. He often would have these big, huge landscapes, like an ocean or a tidal wave or a mountain, and have like people in the painting, little tiny, and they're so small. And that sense of scale, and we're going to get back to the sense of scale because it's relevant to Lovecraft. But what else does Burke include in the sublime? Darkness, obscurity, when things are outside your field of vision, when things are not clear, when the details are fuzzy. He even includes like certain cries of animals, like you're in the woods and you hear I used to be able to imitate a caribou with a whistle, but you hear like the bleat of an animal in the distance, and that can be a sublime experience where it's scary but pleasant. I'm trying to avoid saying scary but beautiful because, of course, Burke divides between sublime and beautiful as distinct, but as frightening but aesthetically pleasing. Lightning. Things, he mentions like certain very strong odors, like sulfur or the odors of decay, like rotting leaves. He creates these things, and this gives us a really strong foundation for understanding Gothic horror and Gothic fiction in general. Like a lot of the characteristics of oldness and largeness, of menace, of obscurity that make things sublime for Burke is what makes Dracula or Frankenstein scary but also alluring and captivating. These aesthetic experiences are defined not by they're not defined by, oh, that's so cool, but rather I'm experiencing something horrible at a safe distance. And whether that distance is literary, like it's just pages, words on a page, or it's just a movie, right? But that level of abstraction allows us to engage with horrible things in a way that is pleasing. We feel safe, but unsettled. And we like that for whatever reason. So, what does this have to do with Lovecraft? I listened to a podcast with James Ragi, the creator of Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and Zach Smith. He wrote a bunch of stuff for Lamentations, and I've been revisiting some of his work because I'm checking out his new game, Demon City, a horror RPG. And it's good. It's a really good game. It's very well written. But in this podcast, they were talking about what makes Lovecraft work. And I thought it was really, they touched on something. And it was kind of an offhand comment, but it really got me thinking about Lovecraft and the sublime. They talk about Lovecraft's work often has this undercurrent of sexuality and violence, like really gross, squicky stuff, like the Shadow over, is it Innsmouth? Shadow over Innsmouth? The Innsmouth story with people copulating with fish people and like hybridizing with them. That's like gross and horrible. Or in At the Mountains of Madness, when it mentions, but does not really get into detail about the fact that some people have been vivisected. They've been like dissected and cut apart. And what Zach said in the podcast was, for Lovecraft, it was never about the horror. It was never about the actual thing that is causing horror. It's like the sex and the violence is the sun. And if you can't look directly at it, and if you get too close to it, like you get disintegrated and you cease to exist. And so what you're experiencing is not the sun directly, but rather proximity to it. So you're not experiencing sex and violence directly, but you're experiencing this proximity to it. And so the horror is obscured from you. It's removed from you because engaging it with it directly is too much. It's too big. It's too terrible. And this is exactly like the example with the Avalanche. This is the exact same thing. This is the sublime. This is the foundation of all Gothic horror, is the proximity to, but not direct experience of, something terrible. That layer of safety, that line of separation is what makes it work. It's what makes the horror bearable, and it is actually what makes it scary too, in a way that is really popular and enjoyable and artistically valid, as opposed to like just unsettling and genuinely disturbing. Where these lines fall for different people is going to be different, but I found it really interesting that this is how Lovecraft works. There's kind of multiple angles by which Lovecraft is working within the Gothic, within the sublime. First, there's the idea that when there's something really truly horrible and repulsive and gross or violent and upsetting and disturbing, he alludes to it. He keeps it veiled and obscure, which does two things. One, it lets your imagination kind of backfill, but also it keeps you it keeps you in the ski lodge instead of on the slope of the mountain. It keeps you removed from the terrible thing enough to actually be able to appreciate the fear in an effective way. But he also, when people talk about the cosmic horror, they're like, oh, I've become aware that the universe is so vast and it feels nothing towards me. I want you to think back to the paintings by Caspar David Friedrich. That sense of scale, the little tiny person next to the huge, vast ocean, right? That sense of smallness in relation to something enormous. This is still the sublime. We're still in Burke. We're still in the Gothic. We're still just engaging with the aesthetic tradition of the Romantics. And the only difference for Lovecraft is that there's this atheistic worldview underlying it, right? It's the universe, instead of the mountain is so big, or the vampire is so old, or these things are so ancient and terrible, which Lovecraft does do some ancient and terrible sometimes, but mostly he takes the idea of largeness and he applies it to outer space, right? He's just kind of one of the first people to think in terms of stars and planets as a source of sublimity instead of, mountains and dark old forests and tenebrous canyons or the depths of the ocean. It's all the same artistic framing. It's all the same aesthetic tradition. And this is why so much Lovecraft-inspired stuff sucks, is because these people don't understand what is true about Lovecraft. They don't understand the Romantic tradition. They don't understand the Gothic. For them, it's about just like, oh, nothing matters. It's nihilism. And that's not actually quite true. Because it's not about personal nihilism. It is about, because nihilism, like that feeling of nothing actually matters, is frightening. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. And so for Lovecraft, it's not actually about the nihilism, but rather it's about someone else's nihilism. It's about a character's nihilism. You, the reader, are still removed from it. That abstraction is what makes it work. And in the same way, back to this podcast, something they talk about is like, oh, Prometheus self-surgery scene. Like, people will look up the gore to a horror movie. They'll look up the most shocking practical effects gore scene in a horror movie and just watch that because they just want to see the good stuff. And that impulse undermines the Gothic, and it undermines the premise of Lovecraft. And so for a lot of people, when they think about writing they'll say they're writing a Deep Ones Lovecraftian story, they're building up to that. Like, the climax of the story is when you directly see somebody copulating with a fish person, or like Mountains of Madness, you like get into the nitty gritty detail, and they really describe this vivisected researcher sprayed out on a table, and they get into the weeds with the gore and the thing, and it's a type of horror. It is but it's the true crime tradition of horror, where the squicky details is the thing, as opposed to the Gothic tradition of horror, where the space between you and the squicky details is is the thing. Where is the weight of the story? Where is the reader supposed to live? Are they living there in the muck and the mire, or are they living in the space between themselves and the muck? I think I'm repeating myself, so I'm probably going to stop. If you think I'm wrong, fight me. Throw hands. Give me your address. I'll be there. I'll be outside your house. And I won't be alone.